So as you already know, it's possible to link repeaters together. We do it like between Grover and Horsetooth and Lee Hill. And Greeley now, we can link all those together. So if you go in on one, you come out on all of them. The Colorado connection is a massively linked system where you go into one repeater in the Colorado connection and you come out on all of them. And they're all over Colorado, and I think, Joe, maybe you know if they've gone a little bit down into New Mexico. I know Rocky Mountain Ham has. Anyway, it's possible. And you could have different clubs. I mean, here we're talking about within a club, we're talking about linking, but it's possible to, it would be possible for different clubs to coordinate and link repeaters and go repeater to repeater. That could be done. Now, between South Dakota and here, there's a lot of open area, and you'd probably lose repeater coverage somewhere in Nebraska where one of them wouldn't reach the next one. So that might be a stretch, and it would have to be coordinated and set up with the clubs. So yes, you could do it, but it would have to be set up. You couldn't just grab on any old repeater and start hopping. That wouldn't work if it wasn't arranged ahead of time. And 0 EMP.
Thank you, Greg. That is a much better way of thinking about it than I was thinking about it. And I now understand the right way to explain how that would or wouldn't work. Yeah, the linking of the repeaters is the key. So thank you very much. K0ARD.
KJM with a comment.
Go ahead, KJM.
You could also try DMR or some other modes that are linked via the internet that requires some special hardware, but instead of having a whole network of repeaters from A to B, you can just have a repeater wherever it was. You had mentioned that that one party that was asking is, and then another one in Colorado, and then it would go over the internet. It is kind of cheating, but you still get a similar end result. And there's also, what are they called? I'm going to drop for just 1 second while I sit here and go, give me just a second.
Echolink.
There's also Echolink, and then I have this little node kind of thing, I guess you would call it, where I can talk from my radio to this little box, and then that little box talks to my internet, and then that kind of acts as its own little repeater network gate kind of a thing, and that's also an option, but again, it's also kind of like cheating. W0KJM.
Well, Kyle, isn't that box a hotspot?
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for, my hotspot. Yep, that's it.
Now I know. I was trying to figure out what you had over there. It's the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah, it's the hotspot from Bridgecom. They call it the Sky Bridge, and that's always another option. They're really fun to play with as well.
Well, speaking of that, Greg should remember this. I was gone for 2 weeks from the ClubNet for one reason or another, and somebody asked the question, and I'm still trying to find this out with James. Can you take a radio and can you link into a repeater who has Echolink, for instance the 447-275, and work it that way? And I remember years ago there used to be something they called Echolink Ready, and the only thing I found was that the 710s with a sound card would work it. That's the only thing I found so far, but I'm still looking on this thing for Todd. But has anybody got any reference to that at all?
And 0 EMP.
Hey, Greg.
There are repeaters that are Echolink nodes. There's a private repeater that belongs to Jim, and I'm drawing a blank on his call. Sonny lives up on Horsetooth on the ridge here. But there are repeaters tied to the internet, and all you need is a radio with a DTMF phone pad, number pad on it. The ESU-FT60s work. Let me reset. Actually, I had to sneeze there, pardon me. So, if you have a local repeater that's on Echolink, through the radio interface side of it, and some other repeaters somewhere else in the world that's also on Echolink, each repeater has I don't know if it's 4 digits or 5 digits, but it has a number code. And you connect to the repeater, and I think you enter the code of the repeater you want to link to, and I think you hit star and then the number, and it opens a link to that other repeater somewhere else in the world. And then when you want the connection to drop, I think someone had mentioned you type in 73, and it drops the link. And sometimes you might hear, on a repeater, you might hear an automated voice saying node 1436 connected, node 1436 disconnected. That's Echolink connecting and disconnecting.
I don't know who that was, but come back.
Jim Wilson, KB0RBT, I believe.
Well, all I know is I do know what the node number is on ours, and I do know that I know what the Echolink number is on it, because that's actually how I tape these shows is through Echolink, is because it's easy. Just poke a button and I don't have to worry about it. But I have never found that information on anywhere. Greg, do you have any idea where I can look that up?
Well, I know you can get into our, even though I haven't done it, I know from from you in particular and some other folks that you can check into this net from your phone on Echolink. You can get into Echolink over the phone into this repeater. I don't know if this repeater used to have it open from the radio side or not, where you could get in by radio, and maybe we had to turn that off a couple of years ago because some people were being malicious and screwing with us. I don't recall. So I know that we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and after the net, a couple people tried getting into this repeater through the radio side, transmitting from their radio and transmitting the code in, and nothing was happening. So I don't know if we had turned that off eventually. I think I remember something about that a couple of years ago. I'm not sure, and James would be the one that would know.
Well, it's an interesting idea, and we have a board meeting tomorrow night, so it'd be a good topic for it. In fact, I think I might even put that on the agenda. I don't recall. But that might be one way. He wants to talk to a friend that's in another repeater, and like you said, I guess you can link repeaters, not link repeaters to repeaters, but you could go through All-Star or go through the Internet to basically link the same way you would normally. But, again, I'm not sure if that is linkable from Echolink node to Echolink node. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, if I'm sitting in my backyard with my ESU-FT60, if I can hit a local repeater that's fully, that Echolink is fully implemented in so that it can be accessed through the radio side, I can activate a link to a repeater in Boston if that repeater is also fully Echolink implemented, and I will pop up on that repeater through Echolink, but not through my phone or through my computer, just from my HT. I'll come out on that repeater in Boston, and if someone, and this goes over the Internet, and then someone in Boston can answer me, and we can have a conversation back and forth. almost as if we were just using the same repeater. I think there's a different tone when you drop, when you release the mic. I think there's a different tone than our conventional squelch tone, the drop little bloop. And I think I used to hear a few years ago, occasionally on this repeater, someone would pop in on Echolink saying, "Oh, hi," a node would connect, and they'd pop in, and but all through radio, not through telephone. And I haven't heard that lately. So again, I think something was going on a couple of years ago, and we had to turn that off. But again, James will know. N0 EMP.
Sorry to keep you guys waiting on this thing. I have no idea. We don't know everything. James does, but I don't. But anyway, we'll find out, and if this is a way that we can do this, maybe we need to reinitiate that. I do know that kind of opens us up to the rest of the world, which is maybe good or bad. I don't know. It depends on what we look at tomorrow. Any other comments or questions, please call. I'm on a board. Well, not a board, I guess you could say. I'm on a, I don't know what the heck they call it. It's a kind of a Google Docs or something for TYT radios, and it's everything on there. And I had a 9600 that I didn't own. It was actually owned by Greeley, the city of Greeley, that I think I've told this story, but I'll make it really brief, which would not work. And the reason it would not work is because we didn't match the firmware to the software when we loaded it. I'll let this drop for a minute. That was my problem. But lately I've seen a lot of them. There's guys talking about an MD 2017. If you recall, that was one of the first dual bands that they had out there, and it is a handheld before the 380 decided it would become a dual band. That was the same, and this guy is having the same problem that I did. I just sent him a note, and he says, no, because it's working now, but it's not working on all bands. And I've heard a lot of things about, not very nice things about TYT radios. Has anybody had good, bad, or indifferent results with one of those things?
Comment.
Go ahead with your comment.
Yeah, go back to the previous subject of Echolink and this repeater. This is W7PAS. From my iPad, I just connected to this repeater and can hear this conversation through Echolink. So that is open and running, W7PAS.
Okay, how did you do it?
The way I did it was I have Echolink on an iPad. I opened the app, and I'm signed up on that app, and was able to just do a quick search for Fort Collins. It brought up about 5 Echolink hosts in this area, and I found the one with the right call sign on it, clicked on it, said connect, and within a second was listening to this conversation on it as well as my radio.
Oh, okay. Well, what we were looking for was primarily something that we had heard you could do without any type of connection at all from a computer, phone, or anything like that. Radio to radio, basically. That's what we were looking at.
Got it. My mistake on that. And there are ways to do that. I'm not familiar with them, but as far as the conversation on whether or not this repeater does have that turned on or off, it is turned on. Whiskey 7, Papa Alpha Sierra.
Oh, thanks so much for that information. I do appreciate that. That's very helpful. But we need to work on part 2 of this. Thanks so much. Any other comments or questions, please call.
K0MLG, Kilo 0 Mike Lima Golf, Marty, with a comment.
Go ahead, Marty.
You can control Echolink just like you do the repeaters. You use a DTMF code. This repeater has that disabled due to, wait for it, some club members got tired of getting connected to repeaters outside of our local area because they think this repeater should only be used for local communications. So it got turned off, and that was quite some time ago, years and years. I'd like to see club members be able to have the code to use Echolink as long as it wasn't abused. But that's the answer. It can be done, but it can't be done right now on this repeater because of differences of opinions. We'll put it that way. K0MLG.
Well, that's somewhat surprising because we ripped all that old stuff out when we put that new system in about 6 years ago. So maybe we just left it off, I guess. I don't know. Well, now we know. Any other comments or questions?
KF0NDC.
NDC, I think it was. Go ahead.
Question for that fellow who knows better. Doesn't using Echolink from radio into Internet tie up the repeater on that one conversation that nobody's tracking?
Well, yeah, it completely ties the repeater up, and that was the complaint. And at the time, I mean, it could have went to another repeater up there. There's 4 repeaters that Echolink could be used on that wouldn't bother people. That's something for the board and the members to, but yeah, it ties it up. But probably not as long as I've tied it up at times. K0MLG.
Well, as much as these repeaters are being used, it wouldn't be a bad idea, I guess. We'll see what we can do. Like I said, I've got it on the agenda. So, any other comments, questions? I have had some people ask me this question. Why aren't you using what is it? What's the option to Echolink?
IRLP, India Romeo Lima Papa. I've been trying to get the club to do that for 15 years. And at the time, it was proprietary. You had to have GE Master 2 equipment. You had to buy their program because they run it. But it is really cool. You can be listening to several repeaters all around, from Arkansas west. And they have trivia nights. They have nets. They have the Insomnia net. That's cool. K0MLG.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a costly thing, and they don't like us much. I have had problems with those guys when they were actually down here trying to get into do some business with us with the Hamfest, and they were not very nice to me. And I thought I was very nice to them, but it's just too pricey for what we were doing and for the little much that we were using it. Any other comments or questions? Well, anybody else want to check in? Please call.
KG6OPC, Justin. No traffic.
Listen.
Kilo Foxtrot 0, November Bravo Charlie. Comment?
My friend?
I like to surreptitiously listen on Echolink while the T-ball game is on, and then I flipped on the radio as soon as I got in the Jeep.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I appreciate that. At least we're worldwide, aren't we?
It works really good. Back to net.
There was a time when we didn't have Echolink at all, and I always thought we should have something like this because it's somewhat handy. I'll be sitting someplace and somebody and I'll have it on a cell phone or something like that, and somebody will give me a call and, hey, why don't you do this or that? So it's been helpful when I didn't have a radio around. I'm not one that carries one in my backpack all the time, so it's just handy. Any other comments or questions?
As MLG again. I actually met the guy that started IRLP. I can't remember his name and call sign at the moment. Big old long tall drink of water, running around with a UHF repeater in his pickup. He owns repeaters in California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona. Just the nicest guy. He was. I met him out in Salinas, California. I was trucking south, and he was headed north to go to another repeater site. I just got to say, he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and he's got a network. Of course, it's funded with other people too, but it is it would be something to maybe reconsider the cost of it. Back then, it wasn't like an annual fee or something. They wanted you to use good equipment and $50 note or something, so it's just not out of the realm of expenses for the club. Anyway, might be something to look into. It is a fun, with all the nets and stuff, it's just kind of a fun way of communicating. K0MLG.
Any other comments or questions? That was a we didn't get you. Come back.
That did sound weird. N0 NYY, November 0, November Yankee, Yankee Bart, Ben Evans, Lake check-in. Thank you for covering for me, Joe.
Well, I'll just hand it over to you because I can go to my meeting now. So have a good one. And now you have the A-team with Mr. Bart. Thanks so much. This Katie's at TYU. Clear.
And this is Bart, N0 NYY, late afterwards net control for this evening's NCARC Technet. And howdy Marty, heard you in there. Just got here myself, just got home. So again, thanks Joe, really appreciate the coverage. What were you talking about, Marty? Bring me up to speed if you can.
Well, Joe, hold on, let me go turn that. Is that background too much?
Negative, didn't hear a thing.
Joe had brought up being able to access Echolink from a radio instead of a internet-based device, and I didn't think he was aware that you could do that. So it brought up, well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, or even last week I think it was, people are trying to use Echolink from the radio and they can't get it to work. Well, it's disabled. Well, it's just disabled on the repeater. We'll leave it at that. And that brought up the other really cool internet-based system, only it ties several repeaters in several states together all at once. It's called IRLP. If you've never heard of it, look it up. I used to use their system all the time out trucking from here out to the West Coast. I could be, one day in Oregon having a conversation and get down into California and finish the conversation, on a different repeater, and then I just, as you go down the coast, just keep clicking from one repeater to the next, and it's a cool way to communicate with a bunch of people at one time.
Roger. I'm familiar with IRLP. Believe I'm about 80% sure it's Internet Repeater Linking Protocol. And yes, I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever used it. I'm curious how you would, I have to think about this a little, how you would use Echolink via radio. And, hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't know you could Echolink with an HT. You'd be going to the internet and then to the repeater, but if I had an HT, I would just go to the repeater. Maybe I'm confused on that.
Yeah, you take your radio and you key it up and you put a DTMF code in there, and then that goes to whatever repeater you want to talk to. And then you push star or pound 73 to end the conversation.
You learn something every day.
So all this time, several people thinking Echolink is only computer? Like, you can only use your computer at home? But then when somebody's on the Echolink, on this repeater using Echolink, and you use your microphone to talk to the repeater, didn't that dawn on you that it goes both ways? I don't know. It's a wonderment to me, but I'm glad you're learning. Yes, you can on some repeaters. No, you can't on this one. Hopefully that'll get changed sometime soon.
This one's the only one I ever used. I know you can go in on the internet and talk through the repeater and listen back through the repeater, but I always did it with a computer or my iPhone. If you have the, whatever it is, the Echolink app on the iPhone, your phone can actually act as a radio, but it's through the internet. But anyway, more on that later. I'm gonna look into that some more. And I haven't even heard of IRLP in many, many years. I guess I just never thought about it. I hadn't heard anything of it. Anyway, very good. Thank you for the fill-in. Any other questions on that topic?
NBC with a question.
NBC, go ahead.
Should the Echolink input be activated? What's the cue to other people that the repeater's in use? What happens?
On my phone,
I cannot key the repeater. I cannot enable my transmit until the repeater drops, not just the courtesy beep, but the repeater has to stop transmitting. Then I can key up the repeater on Echolink, which is why when I do net control, I will leave long breaks for people to check in on Echolink. I don't know that that is always the case. All I know is that that is the case when you use Echolink app on an iPhone. And you just know you can't key until the repeater drops, and if you tried to hit the transmit button, it's grayed out, it doesn't function until the repeater drops out completely. I do not know if that is true if you come in with a computer. If you do come in with a computer, it combines the audio, if somebody keys up after you, it combines the two audios and it sounds like a double, but you hear both voices pretty clearly because it's two separate audio channels being transmitted through the repeater.
Yeah, but my question is, if you're radioing in to an Echolink repeater, trying to access a second one in South Dakota or wherever, what's the cue to the people in Fort Collins that the repeater is in use in that method?
EMP.
EMP, go ahead. And I heard a double with EMP there, double standby.
So you'll hear, if you're a third listener to this repeater, so there's a local person with a radio Echolink into South Dakota to another repeater and talking to a radio in South Dakota. You'll hear a QSO going back and forth, but when either party releases the microphone and the repeater drops, you'll hear a different sound than this sound you're about to hear now.
Okay, so the cue is just understanding there's two different tones and knowing that they sound different. Okay, NBC clear.
EMP clear.
Okay, doubling station with Greg. Go ahead, please.
KZRMLG. So if you're listening to the repeater, and when somebody connects, it should say node blah 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 connected, and then when it disconnects, it should say node blah 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 disconnected. I don't think this is set up to do that. Normally I'm not listening to the repeater when I use Echolink, and when another gentleman keyed up tonight on Echolink, well, he said he was listening to it. Stand by.
Okay.
Well, they've got that turned off also. It should say node such and such connected, and then when they disconnect, it's disconnected. So that's also enabled. So, but like Greg said, if there's a conversation, it doesn't matter whether it's on Echolink or whatever, you're going to hear the conversation. But I think the question you had was what I just answered.
Agreed. Makes sense.
So Mario was on Echolink for a minute there. That's when he had all that echo. And when you heard him drop from Echolink, the courtesy beep was different. It was a lower frequency tone, kind of a little musical little bloop bloop. So a little different than the normal courtesy tone. So if you learn to listen, you'll hear the difference.
It might be important to note, we can test this and see, but there is also a different courtesy beep when someone comes in on the 750 Lee Hill repeater, which is linked to this one. And I don't know if there's a difference between the Lee Hill courtesy beep and the Echolink courtesy beep. If there's a difference, it's very small and I can't tell. But I always made the presumption that that was either Echolink or the 750 repeater coming in. So they can control how those courtesy beeps all work, but I'm not sure if those two are the same or not.
ET.
Go ahead.
K6ET, late check-in and comment. But all of the linked repeaters have a different courtesy tone as well as Echolink, so you'll hear a different courtesy beep from the 275, the 750 at Lee Hill, the 449-600 out in Grover, as well as when Greeley's connected. All four of them repeaters have a different courtesy beep. It kind of helps some people to know which repeater the person is coming in on, which was, I believe that was started from quite a few years ago, Kevin had mentioned it to James, and he programmed all of them when they're linked to have a different courtesy tone, so when he was running the net, he could tell which repeater the people were coming in on. Let me let this reset real quick. In regards to the Echolink and IRLP, Bart, you are correct. IRLP is Internet Radio Linking Project, which is a VO or Voice over Internet Protocol based system, which is one that is actually used to link repeaters together with our repeaters, as well as Rocky Mountain Ham, and some of the Colorado connection is gradually moving over from radio to microwave. We use the All-Star and IRLP linking, which is all done on the backbone without internet, which part of the issue with the Echolink on this repeater is in order to program it to send out the DTMF code to connect to another repeater somewhere over the internet. The internet speeds at some radio sites are not conducive enough to allow that with longevity, and the computer, the filtering gets overrun with the way all of our 30 repeaters are permanently linked together. Also, we use DTMF tones for enabling and disabling different aspects of the repeaters currently with the current system we use for linking. So that was another issue. I believe the outbound DTMF for Echolink was disabled when everything started getting linked together using our All-Star and IRLP.
And this is N0NYY, Bart and Evans, Net Control for this evening's NCARC Technet. Thank you, Jim. I'm glad you're on here tonight, and I'm glad you could fill in those details for us. I really appreciate it. Any other questions, comments on the Echolink slant IRLP slant courtesy beep subject?
Hey, Joseph, two comments.
Good evening, Ben. Go ahead.
First thing about the courtesy beeps, it seems like that anything that's local, you get one, and anything that's remote, you get the same one, no matter which source it's from. I've listened to the 750 repeater. It's basically the same way. It sounds like the Lisa courtesy beep. Once again, all the remotes sound using the lower beep, and then if you're on if the other party's on the same repeater, then you get the higher sounding beep. So I don't know what's going on with that. Basically, you can't tell. You only can tell between local and remote, and that depends on which repeater you're on.
That is kind of how I perceived it as well. The 275 for courtesy beep is one thing, and the 750 and the Echolink, and I honestly don't remember hearing Grover come in, but it does seem like all of those have another courtesy beep, but it's all the same one for all of the remote sites. Jim, do you know if that's something we could eventually change so you could tell where that source came from?
EMP.
Okay, EMP, go ahead.
So a few years ago, James did that, and I think, again, that might have been in consultation with Kevin Utter, but James made significantly distinct courtesy beeps for each repeater, and some of them were like actually, they might have all been a two-note kind of a thing, but they were all very distinct from each other and unique. And a couple people, including our dear friend Michael Huey from aka Horsetooth Mike, really didn't like it. And I think the comment Mike made was, it sounds like a Vegas casino, something like that. So things were put back to a more conservative courtesy beep. But yeah, we did dabble in that a few years back in 0EMP.
I personally feel that being able to identify which repeater or Echolink or source person was coming through I would like to be able to know, even if it was just a little tiny thing, I would like to be able to know the difference, because if someone had a dead battery, had an issue of some kind, anytime there's any kind of an emergency, it would be kind of nice to be able to know what from where did they get into the repeater. Now, it doesn't give a specific location, but it allows you to narrow down, hey, that guy's out in Grover. Maybe if we can get somebody with an antenna that's high enough and can reach Grover, we could get them on simplex if they're not able to make the repeater, or, whatever else. To me, it just seems like it might be valuable to be able to identify the separate ones. I don't have a strong opinion on the matter, but maybe that's a subject for the next club meeting.
I concur, and in the case of what we were doing in the past, I know part of the impetus was that Kevin, who is blind, would listen on a scanner, and the scanner would be scanning all of the repeaters. And if he heard a QSO he wanted to join in on, he would go to his transceiver and join in. But he needed to know what repeater he was listening to. And with all of the tones the same, he couldn't tell, and he couldn't read his scanner it was just a typical desktop police scanner. It didn't have voice features or anything, so he couldn't read the display or tell what repeater he was hearing people on. So by having distinctive courtesy beeps on each repeater, he knew, that's the 115, and he'd go to his transceiver and join in. So that was, I think, one of the key impeti for that. But yeah, your point's also very valid. N0EMP.
Wow, that last station, it almost sounded like Ben's voice, but the signal was pretty rough there. Try again.
It sounded like
So I heard Ben, but you guys doubled, and the other person that was doubling, the last word you said was repeater, but you were extremely rough copy. So maybe someone's trying to go in through the other repeater, Grover or 750. It's not working. But let's go ahead and try again. I copied Ben for a moment there briefly. Ben, I know you're there, but I didn't get what you said. The other station, go ahead and try again.
I think it was KA6ETE coming in through Grover, and he wasn't getting into Grover well enough to really get through. N0EMP.
Roger, thank you. Okay, Ben, what did you say? Go again, please.
Well, as for the casino thing, I think maybe a good idea is to, use Morse code, something like maybe 30 WPM for carry just use a single letter code for each repeater so you can tell which one's which. Maybe that's a good idea. That doesn't sound like a casino.
So the repeater could have a letter designation, like H for Horsetooth, but then everybody that has a Honda would think they left their driver's door open. And a G for Grover, that would be good, and an L for Lee Hill. So that's one good possibility. That would be a neat thing to be able to do. But again, I think this is a subject to bring up at the next club meeting. We certainly wouldn't get a resolution here, but I think there's a lot of merit to that idea. And another point I will add, let me drop. Most of you know the people that you call fairly well. And you know what repeater they're going to be using, and or you know if they're using a scanner. And if you're calling somebody that uses a scanner, our recently departed friend Mark used to listen to a scanner a lot. And if you called him, in fact, he told me this one day, he knew that I use a 275 90% of the time, but one time I called on the 700. He heard me call him, and he tried to respond on the 275. So when you're calling a person that you know uses multiple radios or uses a scanner, include the frequency that you're on. W2MIC M0NYY on 275. It's real easy to add that in. Some people are only ever on one given repeater, and it's not necessary for them. But if you think they might be using a scanner or scanning with their radio, it's a good idea to give the suffix of the frequency when you call that person so they have an idea where to go. N0NYY net control for this evening's Technet. Do we have any other questions or comments for the net this evening?
KJM.
W0KJM. Go ahead, Kyle. Good evening.
Good evening, Bart. So I had kind of a goofy-ish question, just kind of something I think that would be kind of fun to play with. I'm sure everyone's familiar with Motorola MDC or the Motorola Squawk tone that used to be a little more popular than it is now. Now it's all digital, so you don't have to hear the annoying squawk. But is there anything like that that's in use commonly in ham radio at all today, other than like obviously APRS? But is there anything like a squawk at the end of a transmission that is radio side, not repeater side, but anything like that can give kind of like a radio ID and say like, hey, I'm here, I'm on this frequency, and this kind of thing? Does anything like that exist yet?
I know a day of when 11 meters was popular, they would have a Roger beep in the microphone that would send a little audio tone just immediately prior to unkeying the microphone, but my understanding was the vast majority of people didn't care for that. I am not familiar with the Motorola squawk that you referred to. I don't remember back when you could hear that. I did and I've forgotten by now, but I'm sure. EMP.
It was more of a like public safety thing, and it was kind of popularized in pop culture and movies and things like that. And then like a lot of cop shows today, you'll still hear it in their fake radio traffic. It's just a squawk. I'm sure if you just hop on YouTube or Google or anything and search Motorola squawk or Motorola MDC squawk, it's a short little audio burst, and it gives an analog radio ID essentially. It was kind of the radio ID before digital. So I was wondering if there's anything like that. Not just a Roger beep, but it actually carried information. So I was wondering if there was anything like that for hams that you could program your radio to be like, oh, hey, I'm on the 275, and my call sign is W0KJM. You could maybe have something like a MDC squawk where it says KJM on 275, but in a short little audio burst. Back to net.
And EMP, go ahead.
I was going to talk about one type of courtesy beep we have in amateur radio that it's called a reverse break or a chicken squawk. And if you listen to this repeater, and I never even noticed this before, but it really bothers some people, including James. When you release the microphone, there's the little courtesy beep, and then afterwards, when the repeater actually drops, there's a little static burst, a little sound that I never even noticed until it was brought to my attention, and it doesn't bother me, but it really bothers some people. There are systems that have a special squelch that when you release your microphone, it sends what's called a reverse burst that sounds a little funky, but it forces the repeater to drop dead instantly so that you don't get that. It still gives a courtesy beep, but there's no little static burst after the courtesy beep that drives some people up the wall. I thought that's where Kyle was going, and I was going to elaborate on that, but he's talking about something a little different where the radio ID is a little digital code. If it was an audio thing that you could listen to, this is, KJM, so that'd get real annoying, I think. If it wasn't just a little coded data burst, I think it'd be very annoying. And 0 EMP.
I wish I could emulate the Motorola squawk sound. It sounds like a chirp almost, and it's only about a second long. It's actually a shorter audio burst than the courtesy tone on the repeater, but if just the squelch burst at the end annoys people, then that little squawk, I'm sure, would drive people absolutely insane. So I guess that's why it's not a common use kind of a thing.
It's all good ideas to discuss and figure out, though. I did hear it on YouTube, and I do remember hearing that way back in the day. But if you can copy police channels on a scanner today, you would still hear it, I do believe. All right. This is N0NYY, Bart in Evans, net control for this evening's Technet. Do we have any other questions or comments for the net this evening? Please call net control.
LDS?
I think it was LDS. Go ahead.
Kilo LDS. Kilo Foxtrot Team. So, Lima Delta Sierra. Dorval in Lakewood on the Lee Hill repeater. I'm not sure what the frequency is.
And good evening, Norville. Good to hear you. You're a little bit light copy, but you are definitely understandable. Good to hear you this evening. Were you checking in, or did you have a question or comment?
Thank you. Actually, I'm just checking in. That's all I got. No trouble.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have any other late check-ins for the net this evening? I don't have a count because Joe started it and I never found out how many we had. My bad. I apologize. I'm kind of brain dead this afternoon. Any other check-ins? I will go ahead and... any other check-ins via the repeater first?
November 0 Delta, November Yankee, Jim in Fort Collins. And you guys have given me a headache.
W0 RCR, Pete in Pinewood.
Alpha Echo 0 Kilo Oscar, Brad in Wellington.
Kilo Delta 0 Quebec Bravo Mike, Michael in Windsor.
Okay, we'll take a break there. It acknowledges DNY, RCR, KO, and QBM. Any other check-ins? Okay, we will let the repeater drop to see if there's any check-ins from Echolink. Repeater users stand by for just a moment. Anybody wish to check in on Echolink, please call net control now. Okay. Hearing nothing, I will make one more request. If there's any questions or subjects, topics for the net, please call net control now. And remember, in particular this evening, there's no such thing as a dumb question if you're sincere in asking it. People are here to help you understand. We all like to help each other out and move forward in our ham radio experiences as much as we can, and that is the main reason why this net exists. Any other subjects or questions, please call now.
Hey, just a comment about Echolink.
Go ahead, Ben.
I don't know if it's already a option. I mean, I don't use Echolink, so I don't know. But I do recognize the problem where people leave repeaters connected. I don't know if there's a way to do a suggestion box, I guess, that basically automatically disconnects after so many minutes, unless someone on the other side is actively using that repeater and connecting back to the original repeater that initiated the connection. If something like that was there, then maybe it would be less intrusive to have Echolink enabled for repeater from a RF source. Is that easier to see?
If I understand your comment correctly, you're suggesting that Echolink should automatically disconnect someone. And I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think there's any harm to leaving Echolink engaged, as long as you don't leave your push-to-talk engaged, of course, in which case you just time out the repeater. But if someone was listening to Echolink, that shouldn't have any effect, I don't think. Again, I am not an expert in the Echolink situation, but I would be concerned if it automatically disconnected people from Echolink. Or are you meaning other repeaters or just people?
This would be the repeater-to-repeater type connection. I mean, I've heard about people like leaving some active repeater somewhere else in the world hooked up to like this repeater, and then you hear all this traffic. It's completely unrelated to what's happening over here. Yeah, it would be if it was just listening, and then that would be good though. But I would say that if someone's actually using a repeater, someone's actually transmitting to the other side, then that would be the best indication whether or not someone just did it for fun or actually trying to actively use that connection or not. Anyway, I don't know, just possible suggestions. Yeah, I mean, if you're using it through a computer, then no, there's no reason to have a timeout because you're only listening and only transmitting when necessary. It's just a repeater-repeater type connection. Anyway, AE0CF.net.
Very good. Thank you, Ben. Any other questions or comments for the net before we close it out this evening? Please call net control now.
MLG.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, you knew I had to get the last word. Each individual Echolink user, node operator / NCARC can adjust that. So if they want to time out due to inactivity, it'll disconnect. And if there is activity, fine. There may be times that you want a repeater to never or to be manually disconnected, say if there was whatever incident you could think of and we had to provide comms that needed that internet capability, then you would set it so it doesn't turn off. But that can be adjusted to the node owner, operator, whatever, K0MLG.
Roger, roger. And of course I did. I knew that. That's why I laughed. All right. Well, good to hear everybody this evening. Thank you all for your participation and input in the net. Sorry I was late, and thanks again to Joe for picking it up for me. I don't know how many we had, but I am going to close the net at 7:15 this evening. Thank you all, and the repeater is back to normal service in 0 NYY.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. For more information, visit our website, ncarc.net. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.